Welcome to Pat Writes Books. The video you're about to watch is intended for mature audiences. It will likely contain an abundance of cursing, adult discussions, and worst of all, personal opinions. So chill out, grab a snack, and enjoy the show. Take it away, Sensei.
How's it going, everyone? It's Patrick, your friendly internet wordsmith, and today I'm going to be talking about villains, and more specifically, how to create a good one. Have you ever been reading a book, watching a movie, watching TV, it doesn't really matter the medium, and you get to the part where the villain pops up for like the first time, and your first thought is like, who the fuck is this chode? Like, come on now. Yeah, nobody likes that. But writing good villains can be a tricky thing to navigate. So for this video, I wanted to go into detail about, 5 of the tips that I use when it comes to creating good villains. First up, we need to establish a clear definition. And mostly I want to be clear about the differences between a villain and an antagonist, because there are two very different things. Most of the time they are separate, but there are occasions where a villain can be an antagonist. But for a villain specifically, a villain is the main opposing negative force for your hero in your story. They are typically the end goal. However, the antagonist in a story is a force that is sometimes not good, sometimes not evil, maybe they're middle of the road. Sometimes they can not even be opposed to the hero of the story. They're basically there to serve as a roadblock in some way, shape, or fashion to the hero. And a lot of times the best antagonist will be a driving force for change within the protagonist or the main character of the story. Now that we got the definition out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the tips, starting with number 1. And I know you've heard this shit 100 times, but you need to show and not tell. If you're a writer, and if you're watching this video, chances are you have most likely heard the phrase, you need to show and not tell. It's advice that carries over into a lot of different discussions. It's the golden rule of writing. In the context of writing villains, you need to show the evil actions that your villains are doing a good chunk of the time, and not just talk about them. For example, which sounds more enticing? If throughout the story you're talking about the villain, they've eaten babies or something, I don't fucking know. They're a villain. Yeah, you talk about it throughout the book, but you never actually see it. There's no descriptions of it, other than, oh, Bob said Dylan was eating babies, whatever. Or, how about this? Your hero is on a mission or something. Things aren't quite feeling right. They can feel it in their bones, something's wrong. They find a figure in the shadows. Their heart's beating faster. They try to get closer to get a better look. The figure notices them. They come out the shadows. There's a half-eaten baby hanging from its jaw or something. I don't know why I went with the baby metaphor, but we're here now, so let's roll with it. Yeah, that's a lot more enticing and can invoke more of a response from a reader than if that same scenario was told secondhand from some character in the book. Show the evil, don't just talk about it. Tip number 2, and this one kind of piggybacks on number 1 a little bit, but your villain should be hands-on. Of course, it's perfectly fine to give the villain some minions. In fact, if the villain didn't have a group of followers, it'd be kind of weird. However, as a rule of thumb, the further away a villain gets from the action, the less interesting they become. If it gets too bad, you may find your readers enjoying the flunkies more than the actual villain, or just finding the villain not very interested. Like, fuck me, who cares about this guy? I recommend at least once in the story before it reaches the narrative climax that your villain intervene with the hero's journey. It doesn't need to be a direct intervention. The hero and villain don't even have to meet, face to face. But the villain needs to make their presence known in a big way that says fuck you to the hero. Bonus points if somebody gets schmurdered. Tip number 3, give your hero a tragic backstory. Now, admittedly, this one is pretty subjective, but in my personal opinion, the best villains all have layered stories. However, all villains do not need, nor should they have, a layered and complex backstory. For example, a chaotic evil villain, i.e. a villain who is supposed to be the, like pure embodiment of evil. Yeah, they don't need a layered backstory. They don't need tragedy in their life to explain. Yeah, they don't need that shit. They are supposed to be evil incarnate, and as such, that's why they do the evil things that they do. The fuck did you expect? On the other hand, my favorite kind of villain is the one that you can kind of agree with. I mean, not really, but kind of, if you look at it in the right light. Basically, with this, what you want to do is give your villain a believable reason for them to be doing the things that they're doing. That's not necessarily to say that you're trying to justify the fucked up things that they're doing. Basically, what you want to do is instill a feeling within the reader that, yeah, that was pretty fucked up. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have did that, but I mean, low-key they had a point. I mean, still shouldn't have blew up that whole fucking village. That was way overboard, but kind of had a point. On to tip number 4, and for this one, you need to make your villain a competent and imposing threat. Imagine this. You're reading a story and the villain has been hyped up all book, and this gets worse with multiple books if we're talking about a series. The villain's been hyped up to no end. I mean, this guy has fucking murdered the hero's girlfriend, his dog, his mentor, his fucking pen pal. I don't know. This villain is a bad dude. You finally get to that climactic battle, and it's over in 2 fucking seconds. The hero busts the guy's grape. It sucks. Yeah, that's that weak sauce. Instead, what you should do is have your hero nearly fail. Bonus points if they die or almost die in the process. See, one of the best ways to give that villain that extra oomph is if they almost win. Now, admittedly, this is a tricky thing to pull off. Your villain needs to be powerful enough so that it seems nearly impossible for the hero to win. But they also need to be not so powerful that when the hero does win, it doesn't feel like an ass pull, or it's plot armor, or the story demanded that the hero won. So by the power of friendship at the end, the hero finds some newfound strength and just fucks over the villain. Yeah, nobody wants to read that shit. You gotta find the balance there. And my final tip, number 5, you should use juxtaposition when creating a villain. Of course, there is nothing wrong with a villain who both looks evil and acts evil. Or say a villain who says some heinous shit and then goes on to do malicious things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And certainly there's dope villains who fit that category. On the other hand, if you say have a villain who's a certified snack, but on the inside they're rotten to the core and does despicable shit in a heartbeat, or I don't know, let's say you have a villain who's a sweet old lady, but yeah, come to find out by the end of the book, they've been secretly fucking the hero over every chance they get, and they're the true villain of the story. I mean, well, now you've introduced an interesting dichotomy to the villain, in which the reader may find the villain even appealing, but damn it, they're the villain and they need that ass whooped. So, I mean, again, you got 2 different sides of the coin. One last thing before closing out the video, I thought it'd be cool to include one of the villains that I find to be very interesting, and that would be Medusa Gorgon from the Soul Eater franchise. It's my Soul Eater shirt. Now, oddly enough, Medusa checks off a lot of the boxes in this video that we were talking about. You get to see a lot of the heinous shit that she does firsthand. She's very hands-on with her schemes. She has her flunkies, yes, that she manipulates into working for her, but a lot of stuff she puts in motion herself. She is very deceptively sexy, and if you weren't seeing her in her deception, you probably wouldn't suspect her until later on in the story if you didn't get to see that she's scheming throughout the story. Now, I do realize that was all pretty vague, but I left it vague intentionally because I didn't want to spoil any details in case you guys haven't seen Soul Eater and would like to get into the series. One quick note about that though, there are major differences between the manga and the anime. So honestly, I would recommend enjoying both mediums to get the full perspective. And also, anyone who tells you that the anime ending was good is a fucking liar. Ending was trash. Not even gonna lie. But it is a hell of a ride till you get there. So, it's worth watching the anime. Just ignore the ending. Yeah. And that's gonna do it for this one. Feel free to hop down in the comments below. I'd love to get your opinion on what makes a good villain for you, and also feel free to let me know what your favorite villains are.
Thanks for kicking it with us. If you had a good time, go ahead and slap that like button. And if you're new, consider subscribing, because we do this every week. Of course, you're going to want to hit that bell too so you never miss an upload. Have an awesome day, achieve something great, and we'll catch you later.